Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another session of the Paint the Medical Picture podcast. As everyone can see, today I have a very special guest. I am rolling that red carpet back out for my very good friend and a professional colleague, Robyn Alvarado. So, Robyn, welcome to season 17, episode 3. I'm so happy that you are here to talk to my audience about how you got into this field, how your journey led you to become the expert that you are as a coding professional, as a certified auditor. Folks in the field here can be new when they chime in to the podcast. So I think people have questions on how do you get into it, and how did you in particular get here? I'd love to know.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Sonal. I appreciate that. It's been a journey to say the least. And so when I started out, let's see, I want to say back in the mid to late 80s, they were still using paper claim forms back then. We didn't have electronic payments because it was all too new back then.
Yes.
Everything was paper, paper,
Mhm.
paper, paper. So I actually started out, I had gone to college and graduated in the early 90s, 92-ish. And the town I lived in was at the top of a mountain in a dry county in North Carolina.
Mm.
And there weren't any positions like in accounting and business, which is what my major was in college. And so I started to go back to college, and one of my professors had introduced me to medical insurance. And I was like, ooh, what's that?
Mhm.
So I started taking some classes with that, medical terminology and insurance and all the different courses they offered for that. And something just bit me. It jumped up and bit me. And I was immediately drawn to it. Um, Shortly after that, I moved to Arizona, where I live now,
Mhm.
and started working in an office for some doctors and working on the back end. So, trying to collect the money that they were getting denied for. Why is it getting denied? What's happening? So I kind of got in the back door,
Yeah.
and that's how I ended up transitioning throughout the years to where I am today. But I mean, I didn't wake up one day and think, gee, I wonder if I'm going to be a medical coder and an auditor, right? I
Right.
mean, we don't wake up like that
No.
thinking that. I just woke up one day, honestly, and realized, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Like, I want to have a career. I want to have some stability for my kids, for myself, for our family. And so at one point back in 2004, I started going to school.
Mhm.
So I would go every Saturday from 8 to 12, and I had gotten a course paid for and books and everything, and it turned out to be a CPC class.
Oh,
And so I started going with this organization who trained me in how to code. And I would go home at night and I would read coding manuals and I would read all the guidelines and all the rules. And then I started hearing about the exam and, was terrified of that because I was like, oh God, a test.
right.
Um, but the more I learned and the longer I went to school, the more I just fell in love with it. I think if you talk to any coder today, there will be that one maybe life event
Mhm.
to where they had to make a change and they didn't know how or what. But once they found it and they were sucked in, they're kind of with it for life, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I'm feeling. At one point, I was pulled in the direction of behavioral health.
Mhm.
And I mean, literally, I was pulled in that
Right.
direction.
Yeah.
And at the time, behavioral health was still all fairly new to
Yeah.
the public, to the world.
Mhm.
And it's been around a bit now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the parity laws
Mm-hmm.
that are in place that say, hey, if it's a mental illness, you have to allow services for
That's
that
right.
illness
Mm-hmm.
because everybody has something, right? We
That's right.
all have
Everybody has a
something.
struggle. Yes.
Yes, and it's okay, and I think the more we get that out there, it's
Yeah.
okay to not be okay. It
Right.
doesn't mean every single moment of every single day you're not gonna be okay, but it's okay to have those times, to go through those periods of grief and loss and whatever you're going through. And the more I saw the records for that field, I can tell you the more I fell in love. And then, of course, you start to move in different directions because children are very different than adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
And older adults are very different than younger adults
That's right.
and teens. Like, that's a whole other ball of wax. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot. There's so much to do in the medical field. And honestly, I can't imagine doing anything else with my life today.
I love that.
I feel like I'm at such a good place.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't wake up one night and be in this place. So
Right.
it's a lot of work. So anybody who's listening, find a mentor, someone who you can work with, someone who's encouraging, and who can walk you through things. And don't take no for an answer. Um, Work with your doctors, work
Mm-hmm.
with your nurses, work with your providers, not against them. And don't start with negativity, right?
Right.
Look, Dr. Joe, look
Mm-hmm.
at you're doing. This is not good. This is wrong, 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 wrong. Okay, we don't want to do that. We want to say, hey, this is what you're doing right. Maybe we could tweak this a little, right? And then
Yes.
go back to, okay, so you're going to do it like this, right? Okay, and get them involved in whatever education you're trying to give them
Mm-hmm.
because chances are once they start to hear what you have to say, they're going to know that you know what you're talking about, right? They're going to know that it is important to know the business side of medical auditing and coding as well as
Yes.
the clinical piece. So, wow, I feel like I'm rambling.
No, no, you have definitely taken us through your journey,
Yeah,
right? I mean, you actually did take classes early on in insurance, right? Not a lot of
yeah,
people, um, definitely at that period in time, also had that opportunity, right?
right,
My son is now in his third year of college, and when we went around perusing the college campuses, etc., you know, not a lot of colleges today even have such, niched out coursework in coding or in billing or in healthcare insurance, right?
right.
They definitely have the pre-medical classes in sciences, et cetera, for becoming a physician. But in
Sure.
terms of the business of healthcare, there's not a lot of colleges out there that have that kind of coursework. There are community college programs, definitely, but the bigger places where you can get your BA or your MA from, I just don't see it happening. So I think that's a
Right.
really interesting, place that you fell in love, right? And there are people in this field definitely are very passionate once they find it,
Yes.
because it really does take a certain person who likes to investigate, who likes to research, who likes to do that analytical thinking when it comes to first being a coder, which we both are, right?
Right.
Because it's very different skill set that you have when you're a coder versus a auditor, right?
Right.
I know I've heard a lot of people talking about that recently because once again, it's the new year. So there's a whole new wave of students, younger people, or people transitioning to this type of career path, right? They're interested
Right.
in finding out what the differences are, what coursework should I be taking, can I, aim for both at the same time? Um, I don't know what possessed me. I was reflecting on my own past recently, and I don't know what possessed me to get certified in one year, the same year, for the CPC and the CPMA.
Oh, no.
I don't know what possessed me, because the CPC at that time, years ago, it was a 5 hour and 40-minute examination.
Mhm.
That's very long, very stressful. There's so much material that you have to master. You have to know your code books, etc. Right?
Mhm.
All of those types of things are very, very stressful. And then I passed that and I said, well, I'm just going to do the CPMA. And I thought about doing that within like 2 months of passing the CPC. Like I said, I don't know what possessed me to do it the same year. Nobody at that time was like, oh, this is the next best thing, get the CPMA. People are talking about that now, that,
Right.
it is a really, really crucial, credential to hold because the healthcare landscape has changed. There's so much scrutiny
Right.
in the documentation, in the coding. So
Mhm.
it's really, really good if you can go ahead and sit for that CPMA exam. I loved it. I scored really, really well on that exam. It was my
Oh,
favorite.
I didn't.
It was my favorite test. It was my favorite test. I'm like, I should have done that. Wow. All about the fraud, all about the compliance, all about the auditing chops. And so I don't know what it was. And like I said, this was years and years and years ago. Um, why I thought that would be another good auxiliary complementary credential along with the CPC. Don't know why, but it has been so useful to me over the decades.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely will be too. And I think more and more emphasis is on that medical auditing. And
Mhm.
so that credential really is becoming critical. Payers are um, not only assisting employees to get the education, but to get the certification.
Yes,
Even if you're going to audit for a payer, they want you to have that
they want it.
certification. So I myself was not that ambitious. So in January of 2005, I took the CPC exam and I passed. And then I decided one day to go ahead and study for the CPMA because really and I'm a New Yorker, so born and raised in New York.
Yeah.
I'm nosy. It's probably why I'm an auditor and a
Yeah.
good auditor. I don't know, just saying. Have a few siblings who are like that too. Anyway, I went ahead and signed up and took the CPMA the first time and I failed it. So I took it the second time and I failed it. And I took it a third time and the third time's a charm.
Right.
So, you know, not everybody can test and pass the first
Correct.
time.
Yep.
The CPC exam, now that one I felt way more prepared for, and I at least learned the kind of learner that I am, right? We all learn differently. Some people learn
Absolutely.
by,
Mhm.
okay, let me try it and then I'll see it and it'll like stick.
Yeah.
Some people learn by, okay, show me, now let me try it.
Yes.
We
Yep.
all learn differently. So just learning how you learn is important. And so the CPMA took me 3 times because I didn't take a class. I
Right.
wasn't sitting in a room full of people with an instructor,
Right.
asking questions, reading things together, bouncing stuff off one
Mhm.
another, and that's really where I thrived.
Yeah.
So, at least I can step back and recognize how, the best way for me to learn
Yeah.
how to do a job. So, let me get in, let me jump in with both
Mhm.
feet, trial and error. I'm going to ask questions. Yeah, so the CPMA credential really is vital now.
Mhm.
It really is.
Totally true.
Mm.
Now, as I think back on when you were talking about, one of your first positions, we align really, really well because I also started my first job in the back end of things
Yeah.
in AR, trying to collect that reimbursement that's just laying on the table for, over 30 days, over 60 days, over 90 days, 120 days, a year has gone by.
Yeah.
So I got hired my very first because I transitioned, right? I had a career pivot. folks on my audience know, I was a art historian the first half of my life. That was my
Wow.
career. So museums, curating things, writing up those little beautiful, extensive blurbs on walls that talk about the painting or the sculpture. I used to help do all of that, all of the research that goes into that. So anyway, had to make a pivot. How do I take care of myself? How do I take care of my child? What do I do? The economy had tanked in 2008, 2009. And that was when everything in the humanities was just tanking. And so what can I do?
Right.
What can I do? What can I do? Right. So you just have to dig deep. And that's what I did. And I was like, I cannot stay in the humanities. This is not the time, right? It was a high time of crisis for
Yes.
that particular avenue. So how do I shift? Well, let me get into science. I have science in my blood. Science is in
Right.
my blood. My father he's retired, was a physician here in the US for just 40 years. I talk about him all the time, but no, he didn't help me get a job. He didn't help me figure out that I should be a coder. Did all of that on my own. And so I decided to study for a full year because I didn't have strong sciences in high school or college because I was focused on the humanities, right? And so, I really wanted to learn more about anatomy, physiology, et cetera, pharmacology, everything. So I did great. But then when it came time to get a job, what do you do, right? Because you just get the 4.0 certificate program, but now you want to run for your job, right? So I always try and mentor people who are trying to come up in the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's really need to be hungry and you really need to start anywhere.
Yeah.
Because the more I think about it, it's 2026. Healthcare is huge. You do not need to start and just think you've studied to become a coder, so that will be my first job, right? No, more often than not, you can be in other positions in the office or in the hospital, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can be in the back room in AR collections. You can be in the front office. You can be on the phone. You can be scheduling patients. In the hospital, you can be a greeter. There's
Yeah.
so many, many, many ways that you can enter into healthcare, right? And once
Absolutely.
you develop friends and connections in that workplace, they will know all about you. Oh, she's really good. She's got her training in medical billing and coding.
Mm-hmm.
She says she's really strong in behavioral health. Do we have any possible openings, right? So people
Right.
will put a bug in other people's ear in that facility, in that organization, in that
Yeah.
entity. And so that's how you can really, get your way in. But I loved
Absolutely.
being an AR, right? I loved helping collect all of the money.
Same. I did too. I
Right?
used to look for, they actually assigned me to do like the high dollar AR. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking like 100,000, six
Yep.
hundred thousand
Yep.
surgeries, like
Yes. Yes.
trauma cases,
Yes.
those kinds of things, which are mind blowing.
Yes.
And
Yep.
then you shift gears and you go to like, okay, now we're going to try to collect on this office visit. And that's
Mm-hmm.
completely different. There's
Yes.
just such an array of positions in the
Mm-hmm.
field, and you don't
Yes.
realize it. So, as you're speaking and sharing your history, I'm thinking of all the things that I've been doing in the past.
Yeah.
I worked for Apria Healthcare, which is a
Mm-hmm.
large DME company,
Yeah.
and I did customer service, but that's where I learned what the clinical medical necessity form is. What is
Yes.
medical necessity? What does that even mean?
What does that mean?
What's a
Right.
CMN? And
Mm-hmm.
why is Medicare making everybody have one? And if you don't
Right.
have a CMN, you have to have an ABN. And I
Right.
mean, what is all those acronyms
All the
anyway?
acronyms of healthcare. Yes, the alphabet soup of healthcare.
Yes.
Yes.
And you know what? Was because we don't have enough, we're going to make more up as we go because that's what we do in the healthcare field. It's crazy. And I have read notes where every other word literally was an acronym, and I could not identify what service was
Yeah.
rendered. And
Right.
so, I mean, Yeah, it's crazy, but I worked at a nursing home. I worked at an ambulatory surgery center, and back then, I was loading the paper for the UB04 claim to print
Yes.
the big
Yes.
hot matrix printers, like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, we don't do that anymore.
Oh,
Everything literally is electronic.
is digital now.
Yeah,
Right. So, things have changed, right? And we
tremendously.
both have come in at a time where things were a different landscape, right? Like we
Yes,
were coding and had to understand ICD-9
which
CN,
was
right?
easy,
Which was easy. Now we're in
especially for
ICD-10,
mental.
so many more extensions and codes, right? We're still going to learn more because ICD-11 is knocking on our door in the US, right? The rest of the world has had ICD-11 for
Right.
quite some time.
Mhm.
Again, we're behind. We will receive it. We don't know when. But,
Right.
so we have to make sure when we're speaking as a mentor to people that they have to understand that healthcare is forever changing. It is not static.
No.
You cannot be satisfied just knowing the January 1st, 2026 CPT codes and think, I'm done. That's all I
I have arrived.
I would here's my red carpet. I don't need to learn anymore. I am done. Right?
No, never.
People have to embrace the fact that you will continue to learn,
Mhm.
no matter how new you are in the field or
Right.
how experienced you are always going to be a new learner simply
Always.
because healthcare is forever changing.
And
So,
just because I went through a class on how to be a coder,
mm,
that doesn't mean I know everything about everything, and I don't know everything about every single
specialty.
specialty. No, I don't know. I don't profess to be a specialty auditor for anything.
No,
You know,
no,
I'm constantly teaching and learning myself. And
exactly.
I think that's one of my greatest joys is learning.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I absolutely love it. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it. Um, and when you mentioned the fact that, you know, we have to be able to speak to our providers, our practitioners, without any type of punitive language, right? We're trying to be partners with
Yes.
them. We're trying to help them, right? I love practitioners, right? I grew up with a father as a physician, so my heart is always soft for the doctors, the
Mhm.
nurses, the practitioners, right? So when we go in and try and help them, try and provide education on some of their documentation deficiencies, right?
Mhm.
Why don't we start the conversation off with, oh my God, the record looks great. There are so many wonderful things. I understand. You've walked me through your day with that patient. Everything looks
Mhm.
wonderful. I just have some recommendations for these points,
Right.
so they can just tweak that. Because
Mhm.
whenever you go into right, how many times have we gone into conversations where it is just negative? It is like a dumping of negativity, then how do you react, right? You're
Well,
going to
and
get
how does
defensive
it
and
make
you're not
you
going to be
feel?
receptive, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to shut down if someone is yelling at me that this is not good enough or this could be made so much better. If that tone that you receive is negative, you're not going to get very much reception from that provider or that practitioner. They're going to shut you down. This is why I think we still, even in 2026, have a very bad reputation
Oh,
as
absolutely.
she's the auditor. Oh my God, the auditor is coming in. Like, oh, so they already get upset or their team is upset. Like,
Mhm.
they still see us as people who are going to poo-poo on everything that they do, and
Yeah.
that's simply not the case.
No, and hopefully, as CPMAs, as auditors, coders, we can continue to forge ahead and change that landscape,
Yes.
and encourage providers, partner with your coders, partner with your auditors. They really are there to help you.
Mhm.
when I used to work individually for providers, I specifically would tell them it's my job to keep you out of prison. So if you're going to work with me, I'll work with you. So really changing the attitude behind what you're saying and how you're saying it, like that's huge, huge. I always say I think of a hamburger, you got a bun on top and a bun on the bottom, and the meat is really what you want to get to, right? Well,
Right.
you can't get to the meat until you bite the bun.
That's right.
So you've
That's
got
right.
to start with that positive stuff,
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
get to the meat, right? And then
Yes.
end with that positive stuff. So that's really what I've tried to do over the years. Give
I
them a
love
nice, big, fat, juicy burger.
it. Exactly. No, I love that. That's a great analogy, Robyn.
Yeah.
So, for those of my audience people, I think they're going to want you to come back so we can talk about where you're working today, what you provide in terms of your specialty. I know you said you don't specialize, but I know you well enough and I know you do specialize. And so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
And talk about where you see yourself going as well for next steps in the future.
That's a good question.
Like what do you see yourself doing, other than advising the new people that are coming up, mentorship? Do we think you want to write a book? Like, what do you want to do? So we can think about that
Okay.
for the next time because I would love to hear, where does Robyn see herself in the next couple of years?
Love to hear that too.
What's going to happen? Yeah, it's always good to sit back and just reflect,
Yeah.
not only what we've done in the past, which we've talked about here, which is why we're both inspired to do the work that we are doing, right? But
Yeah.
that's the process. It doesn't just magically happen
Mm-mm.
um, overnight. It takes some building, it takes some working to really, really be satisfied with your career, with where you've ended up. But there's always room. There's always time. There's always
Yeah.
time for more. So I'd love to hear that from you for next time. But
Well,
thank
I'd
you.
love to share it with you. And
Yeah.
thank you for having me.